Chapter 1. Public Humiliation and Sparks of Revenge. The room was alive with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the low hum of important conversations. But Isabella's world had narrowed to a single moment, a word, a gesture, a deliberate humiliation that left her exposed before the city's elite. She had walked into the gala full of confidence, expecting to blend into the glittering crowd, to charm and navigate as she always did. But Lucas had anticipated her every move. He had been waiting, watching, calculating. It had started as a compliment innocent enough to anyone else but to Isabella. It was a dagger. Lucas's words, coated in charm, had been designed to twist her intentions into ridicule, to turn admiration into mockery. He had spoken loudly enough for the nearest circle of influential socialites to hear, his voice dripping with feigned amusement. Isabella, I must say, I never imagined you could actually pull that off. I mean, really quite the surprise. The laughter that followed wasn't genuine. It was cruel, pointed, a volley aimed squarely at her. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face, but she forced herself to hold her posture, her jaw tight, eyes blazing with fury she barely contained. She had underestimated him, yes, but she would not allow this to define her. Sophie, standing just a step behind her, noticed the flush of anger in Isabella's cheeks. "You okay?" she whispered, but Isabella only shook her head, barely audible. Her mind was already racing, cataloging every slight, every smirk, every pointed glance. This wasn't just an insult, it was a challenge, and Isabella loved challenges. Lucas's smirk widened as he observed her momentary falter. He had expected some form of reaction, maybe a polite smile of acknowledgement, but what he saw instead was a spark. Something dangerous. Something alive. "You don't look so amused, Isabella," he said, leaning slightly closer, enough for only her to hear. "I didn't think you had a sense of humor." Isabella's lips pressed into a thin line. "I do," she said, her voice low, sharp, like a blade sliding free. "I just save it for the right moments." The irony was lost on him. He thought her words were timid, but in reality, each syllable was a promise. A promise that this embarrassment, this public blow, would not go unanswered. He had thrown her into the spotlight to humiliate her, but she was already plotting her counter. Damien, standing across the room with a carefully composed expression, noticed the tension crackling between them. He could smell the opportunity. Lucas had made a mistake in thinking Isabella was fragile. Damien knew power when he saw it, and Isabella radiated it now, dangerous and unrestrained. He could feel her calculating, measuring, planning. The gala wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the evening progressed, Isabella moved through the crowd with precision. Each interaction, each word she uttered, was designed to assert control, to reclaim her dignity while planting seeds of uncertainty around Lucas. She listened, she observed, she made notes in her mind about who could be swayed, who could be used, who might betray. Every conversation was a chess move, every smile a weapon, every glance a test. Lucas, meanwhile, felt the shift. He had thought humiliation would topple her, but instead, it sharpened her. She became magnetic, a force he couldn't look away from. He found himself noticing how she commanded attention without effort, how her eyes seemed to pierce through facades, and how her calm composure hid a storm of fury. There was a dangerous allure in that storm, a challenge he couldn't resist, though he knew he should. Sophie stayed close, guiding Isabella discreetly. "You're doing exactly what you need to do," she whispered once they found a quieter corner. "Don't let him see you sweat. Use this." Isabella's mind was already 3 steps ahead. "I will," she murmured. "I'm not just going to recover from this. I'm going to make him regret ever thinking he could humiliate me." Meanwhile, Damien moved carefully, blending into conversations, planting seeds of mischief, watching the reactions, and subtly influencing outcomes. He whispered to a few unsuspecting socialites, planting rumors, exaggerating moments, creating a web of tension that would ripple through the room. He was an opportunist, yes, but he knew the power of timing. And right now, timing favored Isabella, whether she knew it or not. Lucas felt a creeping unease. Something about her had changed in the hours since his jab at the gala's beginning. He tried to shake it off, tried to convince himself that it was just wounded pride speaking, but he felt it a magnetic pull, a mix of danger and allure, of fury and brilliance. He couldn't read her as he used to. She was unpredictable now, and unpredictability unnerved him. Isabella cornered him later near the champagne display, her expression unreadable. "You know," she said softly, almost a whisper, but with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "Not everyone falls apart when they're embarrassed. Some people use it." Lucas blinked, trying to decipher the meaning behind her words, the fire behind her calm exterior. "Is that a threat?" he asked, though he knew deep down it was more than that. "A promise," she corrected, her eyes locking with his. "And you'll see." The tension between them wasn't just palpable, it was suffocating. Every observer who passed by could sense it, even if they didn't understand the details. It was more than flirtation, more than rivalry. It was the collision of two forces that had been circling each other for years without ever truly touching. Now, sparks were flying, and there was no telling whether the fire would consume them both or just leave scorched ground. As the gala continued, Isabella strategically engaged with other guests, subtly shifting conversations, influencing perceptions, and establishing herself as more than a victim of humiliation. Each interaction increased her social leverage, her influence quietly expanding, her presence commanding. Even Lucas noticed the change, the way people reacted differently around her now, with a newfound respect, or was it fear? Sophie watched with admiration. "You've already turned the tide," she said quietly. "All you need now is patience." Isabella only nodded, but inside, patience was not her primary drive. She was hungry not just for revenge, but for control, for acknowledgement, for the realization that humiliation was temporary, but power was permanent. She could feel every heartbeat, every glance, every whispered judgment of the crowd, like fuel feeding her determination. Lucas tried to approach her later, attempting charm, attempting apology, attempting control, but Isabella deflected each effort with grace and subtle dominance. She allowed him glimpses of the woman she had always been. Beneath his perception, a woman brilliant, calculating, untouchable. And yet, in these glimpses, a faint vulnerability lingered, only enough to make him yearn for understanding, for reconciliation, for something he couldn't articulate. Damien, ever the opportunist, made a move. He leaned toward Lucas during a brief lapse in Isabella's attention. "You should watch your step," Damien said softly. "She's not just angry, she's dangerous now." Lucas laughed it off, but the words lodged somewhere in his mind, growing roots he couldn't ignore. He couldn't shake the feeling that the evening's events were the start of something far bigger than a minor embarrassment. He had poked a hornet's nest, and Isabella was the swarm. The climax of the evening arrived with a subtle, yet devastating, social maneuver. Isabella, fully aware of the optics and timing, orchestrated a moment that put Lucas in an unflattering position, one that the room would not soon forget. Guests whispered, eyes flicked, and Lucas realized too late that he had underestimated her completely. Her triumph was silent, controlled, almost imperceptible. But the impact was seismic. Lucas's heart raced, a mixture of panic, desire, and something darker, fear. He caught Isabella's gaze across the room, and in that look, he saw not just revenge, but mastery. She was in command now, and he, for the first time in years, felt powerless. Isabella, meanwhile, allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. It wasn't victory over him yet. It was merely the opening move, but it was enough. Enough to remind herself that humiliation could be turned into power. Enough to remind herself that she was not broken, and enough to ignite a fire that would demand resolution, reckoning, and perhaps, in some twisted way, acknowledgement from Lucas himself. Later, as the gala began to wind down and guests drifted away, Isabella slipped out into a quiet hallway. Her pulse was steady, but her mind raced with possibilities. Sophie joined her, a faint grin on her face. "You did it," she said. "That was perfect." "Perfect?" Isabella asked, her tone measured but sharp. "This is only the beginning. He doesn't even know what's coming." Sophie nodded, understanding the depth of her friend's resolve. "Then let's make sure he finds out, in every way possible." The chapter closed with Isabella standing alone by a large window overlooking the city skyline, her reflection merging with the lights beyond. Her eyes burned with fury, focus, and an undeniable spark of anticipation. Revenge wasn't just a plan. It was a force now, and Lucas was at the center of it. Somewhere, across the room and the city beyond, Lucas felt a shiver of realization. The woman he had thought he could mock was no longer a victim. She was the storm, and he had just made the mistake of standing in its path. Chapter 2. Strategic Moves and Forbidden Desire. Isabella's first move came the morning after the gala. She didn't wait for the world to react. She created the reactions herself. Every interaction, every phone call, every message she sent was precise, calculated, designed to shift the balance of power subtly but undeniably in her favor. Lucas hadn't seen it yet. He was still reeling from the humiliation, blind to the way she had already begun to manipulate the pieces of her revenge. She met Sophie in a quiet cafe, far from the prying eyes of socialites, her mind already racing ahead. "We need leverage," Isabella said, her tone calm but cold. "Connections, opportunities, anyone who can make him falter when he thinks he's in control. I want him unsettled, constantly wondering what I'll do next." Sophie leaned forward, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. "You're already doing it," she said softly. "You were untouchable at the gala. Every move you made, he noticed. He couldn't stop looking at you." Isabella allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Not enough," she said. "I need more than just attention. I need consequences." She began her campaign immediately. Every ally she had, every professional contact, every influential acquaintance became a thread in a web that would quietly ensnare Lucas. Every meeting she attended was an opportunity to build influence, subtly undermining his confidence while strengthening her own. And all the while, she maintained a calm exterior, her fury hidden beneath a poised, controlled demeanor. Lucas, meanwhile, could feel the shift but didn't understand its source. He noticed subtle changes, colleagues hesitating in his presence, friends no longer laughing at his jokes the way they used to, whispers that seemed to follow him wherever he went. The humiliation of the gala had been sharp, but now it was expanding into a slow, creeping unease. He was losing ground without realizing it. He confronted Damien during a private meeting, his tone tense, a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "She's different, stronger, and it's like everyone's following her lead without even knowing it." Damien smirked, enjoying the moment. "Careful, Lucas. She's not just angry. She's strategic, and you're standing right in the middle of her plan." Lucas frowned, a sense of dread creeping in. "I didn't expect this. I thought she'd be shaken, maybe a little embarrassed, but she's using it." "Exactly," Damien said. "And you don't even see it coming." The tension escalated when Isabella orchestrated a subtle public event that put Lucas on the defensive once again. She invited key players in their social and professional circles under the guise of a casual networking gathering, a seemingly innocent scenario that masked her true intentions. Every detail had been meticulously calculated. Every guest, every conversation, every opportunity to elevate her presence and challenge his influence. Lucas walked in, expecting a standard event, and immediately felt the shift. He noticed the attention Isabella drew effortlessly, the way conversations pivoted subtly around her, the way colleagues deferred to her insight. He tried to assert his usual control, making sharp observations and attempting to dominate discussions. But each move was anticipated, countered, and neutralized by Isabella's careful planning. He caught her gaze across the room, and in that moment, the air between them charged with something neither had admitted, but both felt. Forbidden desire pulsed beneath the tension, complicating the straightforward narrative of revenge. His pulse quickened, a dangerous mix of frustration and attraction making him reckless. He wanted to confront her, to regain control, to humiliate her again, but something in her eyes stopped him, made him pause. "You're really pushing the limits, Isabella," he said, approaching her under the guise of casual conversation. She smiled faintly, measured, knowing exactly the effect she had on him. "Limits are meant to be tested," she replied, her voice low, deliberate. "Some of us thrive when tested." The room seemed to contract around them, their proximity drawing tension like a magnet. Lucas's usual confidence faltered, replaced by a raw awareness of her power. He had underestimated her before, and now he was painfully aware that he had not accounted for the depth of her strategy or the intensity of her presence. Meanwhile, Damien continued his subtle manipulations, feeding rumors, exaggerating minor incidents, and planting seeds of distrust among Lucas's allies. Every time Lucas tried to regain his footing, Damien ensured a small slip, a misstep, a moment that left him questioning himself. The intricate web Isabella was weaving was beginning to entangle him, and he didn't even know the source. Sophie watched Isabella's progress with quiet admiration. "You're unstoppable when you put your mind to this," she said, handing over a carefully prepared list of contacts and allies who could be influenced. "Use them wisely." Isabella nodded, her eyes glinting with determination. "I will. And Lucas will feel the consequences of underestimating me. Every choice he makes, every interaction, I'll be one step ahead." The tension between Lucas and Isabella intensified when they were forced to share a private discussion about a potential collaboration in the professional sphere. The conversation was polite on the surface, but every word was laced with underlying rivalry, every pause charged with unspoken challenges. They danced around each other, each testing boundaries, each trying to gauge the other's intentions. "You're playing a dangerous game," Lucas said, his voice steady but edged with frustration. Isabella tilted her head, a hint of a smile on her lips. "So are you. That's what makes it interesting." The forbidden desire simmered beneath their words, electric and undeniable. Lucas found himself drawn in, unable to resist her presence even as he tried to remain in control. Isabella noticed this, storing every reaction, every flicker of vulnerability, adding it to her mental ledger of advantages. As the evening of influence unfolded, Isabella made her first bold, public demonstration of strategy. She subtly redirected a conversation in front of key industry figures, highlighting her insights while undermining Lucas's previous contributions. The effect was immediate. Colleagues began questioning Lucas's judgment. Friends glanced at him with curiosity and newfound respect for Isabella, and the balance of power shifted subtly but irreversibly. Lucas felt the sting, a cocktail of pride and desire he couldn't untangle. He realized she was not merely reacting to him. She was orchestrating the entire scenario, controlling the narrative, and redefining the rules of engagement. The realization hit him hard. He was caught in a web he didn't even see, and Isabella was the architect. Damien, observing from the sidelines, smiled at the unfolding chaos. "It's perfect," he muttered. "Every reaction, every misstep, every doubt. She's taking him apart without him knowing how." But Lucas wasn't defeated, far from it. The forbidden attraction only fueled his determination. The humiliation of the Gala still burned, and now it was entwined with the sharp pull of desire, creating a dangerous, volatile combination. Every glance from Isabella, every measured word, every subtle maneuver kept him off balance, and he hated it and loved it in equal measure. Isabella, aware of the effect she had on him, allowed herself a quiet satisfaction. Not over victory yet, but over the power of influence. She was no longer the woman humiliated at the gala. She was a force to be reckoned with, calculated, strategic, and terrifyingly compelling. As the event wound down, Isabella and Lucas were left in a quiet corridor, a rare moment of proximity that neither could ignore. The tension was thick, almost suffocating, a magnetic force drawing them together even as their rivalry and unresolved conflict kept them apart. "You're different," Lucas said quietly, almost a whisper, his eyes dark with conflicted emotion. "I didn't expect this. Not from you. I've always been like this," Isabella replied softly, her voice steady, controlled, but carrying an intensity that made his chest tighten. "You just never noticed until now." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning, with potential, with danger. Lucas's gaze lingered, his usual arrogance faltering, replaced by raw, unguarded fascination. He wanted to confront her, challenge her, reclaim his dominance, but he was aware, for the first time, that she might be the one in control. Sophie appeared at the corridor's entrance, a subtle reminder that the evening wasn't over, that strategy still needed to be applied, that the game had only begun. Isabella turned to her, nodding slightly, the smallest acknowledgement of alliance and focus. Lucas stepped back, watching her move with calculated precision, realizing that the woman he had tried to undermine was now orchestrating every beat, every conversation, every reaction. He felt the thrill of fear and desire intertwining, leaving him both anxious and captivated. Damien whispered from the shadows, his grin widening. "She's unstoppable, and he's only beginning to realize it." The chapter closed with Isabella standing in the center of the quiet corridor, her mind racing with possibilities, her heart steady with purpose. Revenge wasn't just a reaction, it was a strategy, and Lucas was the first target. The forbidden attraction, the tension, the battle for control. It was all part of a dangerous dance, one that neither of them could resist, and one that would leave lasting consequences. Chapter 3. Secrets, Betrayal, and Emotional Collision. Isabella didn't wait for Lucas to react. She moved first, setting every piece into motion, watching as his world began to tilt under the weight of her calculated influence. The past weeks of humiliation had been nothing compared to what she was now unleashing. Every conversation she initiated, every subtle revelation she planted, pushed him further into uncertainty. The morning began with a carefully leaked rumor, one that Damien had cleverly helped circulate, hinting at Lucas's questionable judgment in recent high-profile projects. The whispers reached the right ears at the right time, causing hesitation, doubt, and subtle shifts in loyalty. Lucas tried to maintain composure, but he could feel eyes on him, glances measuring, conversations pausing when he approached. It was all orchestrated, and he knew it. He just didn't know by whom. Isabella's satisfaction was tempered by caution. She couldn't afford mistakes. Her revenge needed precision. One wrong step, and Lucas could regain his footing, and the fragile tension she had built would collapse. She met Sophie in a quiet office space, poring over every detail. "He's noticing," she said, her tone low and urgent. "Every move he makes, every ally he trusts. I need him to question it all. He can't see the web yet, but he will." Sophie nodded, eyes sharp. "And what about Damien? He's stirring things too, making it more chaotic." "That's perfect," Isabella said, a controlled smile crossing her face. "Let him complicate things. Chaos will make him vulnerable. He'll underestimate me, and that's when the advantage is strongest." Lucas, meanwhile, was unraveling from within. His usual arrogance was replaced by paranoia, every interaction now a minefield. He began to question colleagues he had relied on for years, noticing subtle shifts in loyalty and opinion. He thought he was regaining control, but each step only drew him deeper into Isabella's design. At a critical meeting with influential figures, Isabella orchestrated a subtle power play that left Lucas flustered. He attempted to dominate discussions, to steer conversations, but Isabella intercepted effortlessly, redirecting attention, emphasizing insights that undermined him without seeming confrontational. Colleagues looked to her with admiration, and Lucas could feel the balance of influence slipping through his fingers. "You're manipulating everyone," Lucas said later, his voice tight as he cornered her in a semi-private corridor. "I can see it now. Everything you do, it's calculated. Every word, every glance, every smile." Isabella's lips curved in a faint, controlled smile. "And you're realizing it too late. Timing is everything, Lucas. Strategy is everything. And you're already one step behind." The forbidden attraction between them grew with every encounter. Lucas couldn't deny the pull he felt, even as he recognized the danger. Every controlled smile from Isabella, every precise word, ignited a fire he couldn't suppress. His desire conflicted with his ego, leaving him off balance, desperate to reclaim dominance, yet unwilling to resist the magnetic tension that kept drawing him in. Meanwhile, Damien escalated his sabotage. He leaked sensitive information hinting at Lucas's past mistakes, hinting at betrayal, and raising doubts among mutual allies. Lucas began to lose his footing professionally and socially, unaware that the leaks were being quietly traced and reframed by Isabella to her advantage. Every attempt he made to counteract the rumors backfired, feeding the narrative Isabella wanted the world to see. Lucas was unstable, reactive, vulnerable. Sophie warned Isabella of potential risks. "You're pushing him to the edge," she said. "If he realizes what you're doing too soon, it could backfire. He's unpredictable." Isabella's eyes flashed with determination. "He has to feel powerless before he can understand me, before he can respect what he's lost. This is more than revenge, it's a lesson." The tension escalated when Lucas attempted a direct confrontation at an intimate dinner gathering. Isabella remained poised, her every reaction measured, her expressions controlled. He tried to provoke, to unsettle her, to regain the upper hand, but each attempt was neutralized by her unshakable composure. Every word he spoke was mirrored by a sharper, more calculated response, leaving him frustrated and increasingly aware of his vulnerability. "You think you can outmaneuver me?" Lucas asked, his tone sharp, though his eyes betrayed the conflict inside him. "I've already outmaneuvered you," Isabella replied calmly. "You just haven't noticed yet. And when you do, it will be too late." The room's silence carried more weight than any shout. Guests could feel the tension radiating between them, a charged energy that was both intoxicating and dangerous. It wasn't just a battle of pride, it was a collision of intellect, desire, and raw emotion. Every observer could sense the stakes, even if they couldn't see the full picture. As the evening progressed, Damien attempted one final manipulation. He threatened to reveal a damaging secret from Lucas's past, hoping to destabilize both Lucas and Isabella simultaneously. Lucas panicked, unsure whether to confront Damien, cover the secret, or attempt to regain control by confronting Isabella. The decision paralyzed him. Isabella, however, anticipated Damien's move. She intercepted, subtly framing the threat to emphasize Lucas's reliance on her insight and strategy. Every whispered doubt, every hesitation, became an opportunity for her to tighten her grip, drawing Lucas further into a web of dependence he didn't realize he was entering. "You should have seen the look on his face," Sophie whispered later, as they observed Lucas from across the room. "He has no idea you've turned everything around on him." Isabella's gaze lingered on Lucas, who was struggling to regain composure. "He'll learn soon enough," she murmured. "And when he does, it won't just be a lesson, it will be unforgettable." The forbidden attraction became impossible to ignore during a rare moment of proximity. Lucas found himself drawn to her, his usual arrogance replaced by raw, unguarded fascination. He wanted to confront her, to dominate, to reclaim control, but the pull of desire made him hesitant, reckless, and aware of his vulnerability in a way he had never experienced before. "I don't understand you," he admitted quietly when they were alone for a brief moment. "Everything you do. It's like you're always ahead of me, always 2 steps beyond what I can anticipate." Isabella's lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. "I told you, Lucas, timing is everything. You're learning that the hard way." The tension escalated further as Isabella revealed small, strategic truths, half-lies designed to bait Lucas into overreactions. She mentioned alliances, hinted at secrets, and referenced subtle betrayals without giving specifics, leaving him desperate to understand, desperate to regain control, and desperate in ways he didn't fully comprehend. Lucas's mind raced. Every step he took seemed calculated to counter her, but she anticipated each one effortlessly. His desire and frustration collided, leaving him distracted, vulnerable, and increasingly aware of the dangerous allure she held over him. Sophie provided careful guidance, ensuring Isabella stayed ahead. "Remember," she said quietly, "don't give him the satisfaction of seeing your triumph fully yet. Let him feel the edge, the tension, the uncertainty. That's where the power lies." Isabella nodded, her gaze focused, her mind sharp. "He needs to feel it. Every second, every glance, every move. By the end, he will understand the consequences of underestimating me." The culmination of the evening came during a tense private meeting arranged under the guise of resolving professional issues. Lucas, desperate for clarity and control, approached her with a mixture of frustration and attraction. He was tense, every muscle coiled, every thought racing. "You're dangerous," he said quietly, his voice low, edged with emotion he couldn't suppress. "I don't know how to read you anymore." "I've never been easy to read," Isabella replied, her tone steady but filled with intensity. "That's the point. And now, you're going to learn just how much control I have." Lucas's eyes darkened with conflicting emotions. He wanted to challenge her, to dominate, to reclaim the narrative, but the intensity of her presence, the undeniable pull of desire, left him frozen. He realized, with a shiver he couldn't ignore, that she was no longer the woman humiliated at the gala. She was the orchestrator, the storm, the force he couldn't anticipate or resist. Damien watched from a distance, a self-satisfied smirk on his face. "She's rewritten the rules," he whispered to himself. "And Lucas is caught completely off guard." The chapter closed with Lucas standing in the threshold of the private room, eyes locked on Isabella, realization dawning. She had taken the humiliation, the anger, and the chaos of the gala, and transformed it into a weapon of power. Every ally, every whisper, every subtle move had been orchestrated by her. The forbidden attraction pulsed between them, making every heartbeat heavy with tension, desire, and danger. Isabella, standing calm and controlled, felt the surge of victory tempered by caution. She had won this round, yes, but the stakes were higher now. Lucas was aware. Lucas was intrigued. Lucas was dangerous in his own way, and the next encounter, when their passions and strategies collided fully, would be explosive, unforgettable, and irreversible. Chapter 4. Redemption, Passion, and High Drama Resolution. Lucas didn't know how long he had been standing in the grand entrance of Isabella's meticulously orchestrated event, watching the crowd swirl around her. Every glance, every whisper, every subtle nod she gave to allies reinforced the power she had claimed since the night of his public humiliation. He felt exposed, stripped of his usual dominance, yet magnetically drawn to her brilliance, her intensity, the dangerous grace she commanded. This was no longer a game he could control, and for the first time, he was terrified. Isabella moved through the crowd with purpose, each interaction deliberate, each subtle smile or word leaving ripples that shifted alliances, loyalty, and perception. Her mind was sharp, calculating every angle, but beneath the composed exterior, her pulse raced with anticipation. This night was not merely about revenge. It was about closure, control, and finally confronting the complicated storm that had arisen between them. Damien lingered in the shadows, a predator observing the dance, attempting to manipulate from behind the scenes. He had planted rumors, created chaos, and tried to destabilize Lucas further, but every move he made was anticipated. Isabella had already woven his mischief into her strategy, using it to tighten the noose around Lucas's pride and ego. Damien's confidence faltered as he realized he was merely a pawn in her design. Lucas finally approached her, his usual arrogance replaced by a mixture of anxiety, desire, and reluctant respect. He knew he had underestimated her from the beginning, and the consequences were evident in the careful scrutiny and hushed admiration directed at her from every corner. He had to confront her, but he was painfully aware that the confrontation could either redeem him or destroy him completely. "You've changed everything," Lucas said, his voice low, tense. "I can't. I don't know how to respond anymore." Isabella's eyes glinted with controlled intensity. "You'll learn," she said softly. "You always do. But this time, the lesson is personal." The forbidden attraction between them had become a physical force, drawing them into proximity even as their rivalry crackled like electricity. Lucas tried to maintain his composure, to assert himself, but the tension was overwhelming. Every measured step she took, every glance, every subtle gesture reminded him that she was untouchable, powerful, and aware of the effect she had on him. The first dramatic moment came when Damien, desperate to assert his influence, publicly accused Lucas of mishandling a high-profile partnership, hoping to ignite chaos. The room fell silent as Lucas's face betrayed the first flicker of panic. But Isabella, always anticipating, stepped forward with calm authority. "Let's clarify this," she said, her voice steady but commanding. "The facts speak for themselves." She revealed evidence she had quietly collected over the past weeks, turning Damien's accusation into a demonstration of Lucas's professionalism and her own strategic brilliance. Every guest witnessed the reversal. Lucas's credibility was restored, but the dynamic had shifted. He was no longer in full control. Isabella had orchestrated the resolution, and every ally recognized her influence. Lucas's chest tightened. He had been blindsided once again, but this time he was aware of the depth of her strategy. He felt frustration, respect, and a growing, uncontrollable desire all at once. He realized that she had outmaneuvered him on every front, yet there was a magnetic pull between them, a tension that neither humiliation nor triumph could erase. Sophie, observing quietly from the sidelines, smiled faintly. "The stage is set," she murmured to Isabella. "Everything's in place. Now it's up to you." Isabella nodded, her mind calculating the final moves. She had not just engineered revenge, she had reclaimed her power, demonstrated control, and forced Lucas to confront the reality of underestimating her. And yet, beneath the satisfaction, a flicker of something unexpected stirred an acknowledgement of the complicated, undeniable attraction that had grown between them. Lucas, now standing closer than he had intended, tried to regain his footing, speaking with a mixture of vulnerability and pride. "I misjudged you from the start. I thought I had the upper hand." "You never did," Isabella said, her voice steady, her gaze unflinching. "You only thought you did." The emotional collision intensified as Lucas realized he had been drawn into a web of her creation, one where power, desire, and vulnerability coexisted in dangerous harmony. His frustration clashed with attraction, and he couldn't deny the magnetic pull that made his pulse quicken. He wanted to confront her fully, to challenge her dominance, yet he also wanted to surrender to the tension, to the forbidden allure that had grown between them. Damien attempted a last-ditch maneuver, trying to expose another minor scandal to destabilize both Isabella and Lucas. He approached the crowd with dramatic flourish, but Isabella anticipated him effortlessly. She intercepted, redirecting attention, neutralizing his influence, and revealing his manipulation in a subtle, elegant way that left him exposed. The room's attention turned to Damien's misstep, not Lucas's past, and the shift was undeniable. Isabella's power was absolute, her control unchallenged. Lucas's eyes met hers, and in that moment, the vulnerability he had struggled to hide surfaced. "You've changed everything," he admitted, his voice low, raw with emotion. "I can't pretend I'm not impressed or affected." Isabella's expression softened ever so slightly, a fraction of warmth breaking through the controlled intensity. "I told you," she murmured. "You'll understand when the lesson is complete." The forbidden attraction reached its peak during the quiet moments that followed, away from the crowd. Lucas approached her fully, abandoning pretense and pride, acknowledging the storm of emotions between them. "I've tried to control everything, but I can't control you," he confessed, his eyes dark with conflicted desire. "And I don't want to." Isabella studied him, recognizing the raw honesty beneath his bravado. She felt the fire of triumph tempered by the pull of desire. "You can't control me," she said softly. "And you won't, but you can choose to understand." The emotional tension broke as they finally allowed themselves a moment of unguarded connection. The attraction, the rivalry, the tension of the past weeks erupted in an intimate collision of emotions. Every glance, every touch, every unspoken word spoke volumes. Lucas dropped to one knee, not in submission, but in acknowledgement of both the power she wielded and the depth of feeling that had grown between them. I'm sorry," he said, voice choked with sincerity and longing, "for underestimating you, for everything. But I need you to know—" "You already know," Isabella interrupted, her tone gentle but firm. "And now it's time to move forward. On my terms, yes, but together. If we can survive the storm, we can define it. Not against each other, but with each other." The crowd outside their private space remained oblivious, yet the internal drama was complete. Lucas's pride, bruised and humbled, met Isabella's calculated dominance, and in that collision, respect, desire, and mutual understanding were forged. The tension transformed into intimacy, the rivalry into partnership, and the long-awaited resolution became inevitable. Sophie watched from a distance, a faint smile on her face. "It's done," she said quietly. "The game is over. And yet, it's only just beginning." Damien, witnessing his influence evaporate, could only retreat, knowing he had underestimated her again. Isabella had turned every manipulation, every betrayal, every chaos into a demonstration of her strategic brilliance. Lucas had been forced to confront not only her cunning but also the undeniable pull of attraction that neither could deny. As the evening wound down, Lucas and Isabella stood side by side, aware of the tension that still lingered, but now tempered by acknowledgement, respect, and a fragile but undeniable intimacy. Every eye that glanced their way could sense the story that had unfolded between them, the stakes they had navigated, and the passion that simmered beneath the surface. "You've won," Lucas admitted softly, his voice carrying both surrender and awe. "But I don't feel defeated. Not really. Because I want to be here. With you. Despite everything." Isabella's lips curved into a subtle, satisfied smile. "Then stay. But remember, power, respect, and desire are all part of this. You've learned the lesson, and now it's time to live it with me." The night ended with a quiet but charged acknowledgement of their complicated, turbulent journey. Revenge had been executed flawlessly. Humiliation had been transformed into power, and passion, once forbidden and dangerous, was now undeniable. Every glance, every unspoken promise, every heartbeat was a testament to the storm they had survived and the connection they had forged in its wake. Lucas and Isabella stepped forward together, no longer adversaries but partners in a world that demanded both strategy and desire. The challenges ahead would test them further, but in this moment, the collision of power, attraction, and redemption was complete. They had faced betrayal, secrets, and chaos, and emerged not only victorious but intertwined in a high-stakes, emotionally charged union that neither had anticipated, but both secretly craved. The chapter closed on the two of them standing side by side, gazes locked, hearts racing, aware that the past had been conquered. The present was theirs to command, and the future, filled with both power and passion, awaited. Isabella had orchestrated her revenge. Lucas had been forced to confront his own vulnerability, and together, they had discovered a bond forged in fire, drama, and desire. The storm had ended, but its echoes and its lessons would remain with them forever. To summarize this story, it began with Isabella's public humiliation, but instead of breaking, she turned her pain into power. With Sophie's support and Damien's schemes fueling the fire, she set a plan of revenge that pulled Lucas into a storm of secrets, betrayal, and forbidden desire. In the end, Isabella rose above humiliation, Lucas faced his regrets, and love and revenge collided in a final, unforgettable triumph. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe my channel for more dramatic, intense romances. Your support means the world to me. Thank you for watching. I can't wait to share the next story with you.